Okay, cool. Welcome. Today is November 15th, 2023. So I have a couple of things that I wanted to cover today. Kind of topics that I wanted to review. Todd, I sent you a Loom video about, that smart block question you sent over to me. I think that we should get together and talk about it. So I figured I'd just address that right away. And then, we can kind of brainstorm. Okay, awesome. Beautiful. Cool. So yeah, we'll get together and we'll kind of we'll chat about it and we'll see what the best way to move forward is with that. But I have a couple topics if you guys are interested in what we can kind of like cover today. So today I was thinking we could talk about property triggers and we could go over best practices for that, either upgrading yourself to the scale plan or having it where you're already, you're a brand new user, you just created a free trial, and you're like, I want to start with property triggers. How do I go about that? I figured that would be kind of like a fun thing to do today, but I know that there might be some questions. So feel free if you guys want to drop any questions into the Q&A now, and then we can talk about, we'll see what we want to do moving forward. And if you guys are like, no, I want to see the scale account, show me how I would do it, show me how I would get in there, just feel free to drop that in there. I just need to know, do we want to talk about converting? Because converting is going to be very different from starting brand new. Cool. Looks like we got a question. Let me see. When you duplicate a listing, what's the easiest lift for a TC to get all the tasks I need? Just have them manually apply the templates. So it depends on how complicated that under contract is, right? I usually suggest if you're going to end up duplicating, right? So you click on this little drop down, you click on duplicate, you duplicate the property. This is what's going to come on. You got your fields, your documents, contacts, and notes, which is great because that next property, that under contract property that we're going to be using, we don't need any of the listing tasks. We don't need any of the previous, any of that kind of previous data. We don't even need the one sheet for that previous one, right? Because we're sending out new information. Now, when we do this duplication, I've been in chats with our team about possibly adding in the ability to say, when we want to duplicate, select a property template. That way, if we say we're duplicating, we select that property template. When you duplicate, that property template gets applied, because right now it is a manual kind of update of applying that property template after the fact. So here I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to remove where it says listing. I'm going to say under contract, press enter. So once we have this one here, what I would usually suggest is apply that property template. Now, when we talk about applying a property template through here, I would have a very specific task template that asks a couple questions. Okay. So this is kind of a way that I have found us to be able to, how do I explain this? Get around some of the limitations of the system, depending on what plan you're on. If you're on the scale plan, when you apply a property template, you could apply a property template that if this is a yes, and this is a yes, and this is a yes, then apply, then get these triggers ready for you to add on the other tasks that you need, right? If we're on that scale account, we can have a specific, a set of triggers that say, well, as long as the details, because again, those yes or no questions come on, we can update these. Once we've updated these, as long as those come on, then we can kind of move forward with the transaction. Now, the other way that you could do it, you've got this under contract one now, you need to go in through and you need to apply your main, let's say your main seller's under contract, your main documents, and you want to have it that you still have some conditional power over what templates come on next, right? What I would suggest doing is I would have a specific task template called tasks for property template. And what this would do is I would have, is there an inspection? Is there an HOA? Trying to think of the other ones that we have. Is there, what are the other ones? Is there an appraisal? Not sure exactly what you would need in your guys' process, but the idea is that you would now have, I didn't spell appraisal right. You would now have these particular tasks, right? that have these, that, have this specific verbiage, and you would have a trigger associated with it. And that trigger would be, well, when you've marked off that task, then it adds or removes a template. And the template that it adds is that inspection task template for the sellers. And so what we're doing here is we're having it that we have a property template, and I'm just going to call it sellers under contract, because this is when we duplicate it, right? We duplicate. I'm just going to put that in there. That way you guys know when we duplicate, we've got the sellers under contract. And what this does is it brings on our main under contract for sellers, because we need that task template every single time. It brings on our main under contract documents. Oop, let me see if I can find the documents. Ooh, actually, I think it was that one at the top, wasn't it? Nope. Oh, my bad. I have to click on documents. Here we go. Documents. Purchase agreements, counters here. But when we go to add on those tasks, I would add on that task template for property triggers. And so what we're doing here is that when we go and we apply this, and I'll go ahead and apply it right now because we've already created it. When we go down to that, let me see if I can find that property that I created right now. I think it was my listing. So hold on, let me grab it. Sugar Oak Drive, under contract. Here we go. So when we have this and we go to apply that new property template that we just created, the one that's under contract, the one that we duplicated, we have that, we apply it, right? Let's let it load, refresh the property. Now what you can do is you can just really quickly, if you'd like to, sort them, or if you can, I would probably set some due dates for these tasks, because what we can do here is that if you look at this and you see, is there an inspection? And you go, yeah, there is an inspection for this. You can mark off that task. What that's going to do is it's going to load that trigger and apply that seller's inspection task template to this transaction. I would do the same thing for the other ones. Is there an appraisal? Is there an HOA? I'd have a trigger on there. And if you go, oh, there is no HOA, delete it. We don't need it, right? And so this is a way that you can achieve that kind of secondary quote unquote intake form, where instead of you having it that the property template's going to apply the templates and then you have to go through and you have to delete the templates, instead you have a very specific task template that says, well, is it there? If it is, check off the task, get that task template on there. If it's not there, then delete the task. We don't need that task template on there. And so that can be a way that you can kind of get around it. Could you set triggers to fire when the value? Yes. So the way that you're referring to, Todd, that would be if you're on the scale account. This is specifically for people who are on the grow or pro account. This would, or the grow, I'm sorry if I said grow, grow and pro account would have to build out these triggers on their task templates. Now, when we're talking about the triggers, we can build that same exact logic, except for instead it's based off of the, I did say bro level, didn't I? When we're talking about our triggers here, I would have, once again, another one, tasks or task temps to be added. And you could say like, again, this would be after the property's been created or whatever that looks like. Here, instead of it being related to a task that you check off, you would just say add or remove. You'd say seller inspections. And what I like to do is I'm going to clone this really quickly. And the reason I clone it is because when we're talking about our property templates, specifically when we're talking about our tasks, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to have both sides of the coin. When we're talking about these guys, we're going to want to have it that, well, if it meets the conditions, so if it says inspection, will there be an inspection, is equal to yes, then I want it to add on the seller's inspection task template. However, if it's equal to no, right? Because if you have it that you duplicate and they go through and they're validating the information and they're filling out those fields and you're using your property triggers, you would want to have a yes and a no. That way your TC, when they say no, they can make sure that there are no seller inspection tasks on that property. So that would be kind of the difference, right? Instead of you on the property, check off a task, have that task template apply. Oh, actually wrong one that I went through. Here we go. Instead of on the property, check off that task, have the task template apply. The way it would work through the triggers is here we would have, and let me go ahead and just apply that trigger template that we just created. Instead, the way that we would have it is that, well, if the inspection is equal to yes, so here we'll go down to, will there be an inspection? Change that to yes. Then it'll say that this particular trigger has been met. It will allow it, you can say execute, and you can have that particular task template apply. Or if you change this to no, right, your TCs change it to no, a different trigger will come up to say that it's ready to go out. And that trigger is to remove that task template. So this is what it would look like if you were building it out with your property triggers. Since we're on the topic of property triggers, let me know if there's any other follow-up with that. Like I said, you can either build it out where you have task templates, a specific task template that has those questions written out. This is a manual way of getting it done. Having those particular triggers set up that if you say yes to this, right, if you check off this task, then it applies the appraisal task template. Or if you don't need it, you click on the delete, you trash can that. The other way to do it is if you are on that scale plan, you can create a specific trigger template that when it meets these conditions, will there be an inspection equal to no? It either removes that task template, or if we change that question to yes, then what it's going to do is, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh the screen. What it does instead is it says, okay, well, you can't apply that specific task template. So that's kind of the difference. Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, what I would do, Todd, is definitely look into, if you're on tasks, if you're using task templates, definitely look into using something like this. Definitely look into creating a task template called tasks for property, right? That says, is there this, is there this, is there this? Because it's pretty quick. If you notice, I check off that task, boom, seller's inspection tasks, they're applied, they're here. Right? Versus the difference with triggers is you fill out the field, then you select execute and you're good. Then that gets on there. When we're talking about those tasks, thankfully, the task templates that are associated with task triggers, I know that's a lot of tasks right there, but the task triggers that are specifically to add templates, those will fire automatically when we check off that task. Okay. So again, if I add appraisals on here, so I say, when this task is completed, I want to add or remove a template, and the template that I want to add, I don't even know if I have okay, good. I do. Seller appraisal tasks. We'll go ahead and turn this trigger on. When I check off this particular task, that trigger is going to automatically apply itself to this property. So I check off the task, the trigger is going to apply itself. So I don't have to review it and check it off and execute it. When we're talking about those tasks, they get applied. So now if I go to my tasks, here's that appraisal tasks immediately added on there. Cool. Good question, because we got to talk about one of the kind of the scenarios that I've seen some people use and I've suggested for some people. Do we have any other questions on how to handle that specific part, or do we have any other questions just in general? Cool. Do we want to jump into, I wish I could create a specific poll to ask for this. Maybe I can. Do we want to jump into, oh, I can. Let me see if I can create one. Go. Okay. I think that this will work. I think it'll launch. Oh, I have it as untitled right now. Okay. Let me know if you guys, okay, cool. Looks like it's showing up. So scale account review. What I really want to hear from you guys is, do we want to look at how to start a scale account from the very beginning? You just created your free trial. How do I create that scale account? Or do we want to look at how to convert to property triggers? So you've been using the system, you've already set it up in one way. How do I get myself over to that property triggers review? Or how do I know when I'm ready for property triggers? Feel free to fill out that poll that I just posted for it. In the meantime, though, I do have some topics that I can cover with you guys because we had some FAQs that came up for this week. So let me pull that up really quickly. Awesome. So it looks like we had some issues with getting FUB integration to show up, specifically when it came to, it looks like the widgets. So I'm going to head over to our property here. Let's go to this Ivy Lane one. We're going to go over to the More tab. We're going to go to Follow Up Boss. Again, usually the process for Follow Up Boss is you're going to make sure that you have your Follow Up Boss API added to your account first, and then you're going to head over to that property that you need to go and make some connections on. Once you're on that property, obviously you select Follow Up Boss API. When you get down to the widgets and you're saying, well, I want to sync this information here with a specific contact through the widget, we're going to look up that particular contact. Hopefully it lets me do it. Let me see. I know I've got a John in there. Maybe I've got a Christina. Okay, what about Hannah? If it doesn't let me do it on here, I'm going to have to go and grab someone else's account. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, let me go ahead and grab Sugar Oaks Drive. Here we go. See if we can find them through here. Cool. So here's John. We're adding John to this widget so that way when we look at John within Follow Up Boss, we can pull over the information from open to close. But what we need to do first, right? We've added John 2 here, but we need to select that role. I've talked about these roles before. I'm going to go ahead and click on Manage Roles. And what I want you guys to take notice is that for FUB Agent, it has access to all of the details. The FUB limited FUB Agent only has access to timeline details, documents, uploading and downloading. So that's kind of the difference between the two, is that here, this one, we're going to give them access to everything. We want them to see everything within that widget in Follow Up Boss. And for the other one, we just want to give them a couple of the details. You know, they don't need to see the tasks necessarily, but giving them access to the timeline, to the details of that transaction, to the documents, uploading and downloading, that's going to be crucial for that agent. Okay. So kind of just depends. Remember, usually when we're sharing this information for details and timeline, that's going to be a viewable situation within FUB for the time being, where the agent's going to be able to see that data, but they're not going to be able to update that data. So if there's anything that needs to get altered, they would still need to reach out to you and let you know, hey, this needs to be changed. If something does need to get changed. But for documents, they will technically be able to download those documents if they need to download them, or if they need to upload them, they'll be able to upload them. Cool. So once we've done that, we just want to select the role, and that gives them access. That pushes the information over onto John Doe. And so John Doe within Follow Up Boss has that widget, and that widget is populating the information listed here. If there was any, this one's a very blank property. Awesome. The other one that we have is how to delete a team member. So obviously, usually I suggest head over to our little person icon. We're going to go to Support Center. And usually if you need to delete someone, I would say type in delete team. So delete team member. Here we've got this article here. This goes through and it has a video kind of showing the steps. But the main thing that you want to do when you're going through and you're removing a team member from your team is you want to make sure that they're removed from all of the other teams first. So for example, I've got this one in here and I do need to get development to help me out with removing this particular person. But the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to make sure that they are not a team member on any of my teams. So looking here, it looks like they're a team member on here. I would want to delete them. And I'd want to say, well, I want to move all of the other properties, intake forms or properties over to our implementation specialist on this particular team. Say delete. And again, this might not let me go through. Like I said, I do need to get development to come help me delete this particular person, just because we've done a lot of testing on this account. But here you'd want to go through the steps of removing that and adding it to a different person. That way you don't have to worry about when you go to actually truly delete that particular team member, that it doesn't delete any, you know, that those properties, they don't just disappear into the void, right? They need to be assigned to someone else before you can remove them. So like I said, I usually suggest go through our article. It's got the step-by-step instructions on how to delete that particular user. We've got a great video on how to delete that user. You can also go through and figure out how to review and add team members to teams as well. That's another thing that I've seen kind of paired with this. Sometimes we're removing a user and we're adding on a new one and we go, why doesn't that user see, the things that they need to see, or why don't they see, the properties? Well, that new user that you just invited to your account, they are going to need to be added to a team. So if I just created a user and I don't have them on a team yet, they're not going to be able to see any of the properties. They're not going to be able to do very much at all until they've been added to a team. So keep that in mind. Cool. Looks like, again, we kind of have some of those questions about the Google API. The best solution that we have for that, if you guys get a 400 error, is to delete that connection and then make that connection again. I noticed on a previous training, I believe it was yesterday's training, that I did not have to take a specific step to review my content anymore. So I went to my email inbox. Looks like it's a little grumpy right here, but let's go ahead and disconnect that and reconnect it and see if it lets me get back in there. Because when I had done it yesterday, it actually let me go through and get my inbox back in there. But basically, we would want to disconnect if we see that error, and then we would want to reconnect. Sometimes there's a step in between where we need to like clear out the permissions within our Google account and say that we don't give permission to it. But if it's going to do what I think it's going to do, okay, good. It's still giving me this error. Perfect. So usually if you guys get this error, you have issues, or you're trying to send out an email. If I try to send out an email right now from that particular email address, so let's go ahead and change this from Meow to Hannah and say, I want to send this out. I think I have a couple people in here that I can send this to. And I get that 400 error right here. What I'm going to want to do, the steps, I'm going to want to head down to apps and API. I'm going to want to disconnect. Now, you guys may have already saved this from a previous time that you've run into this issue. If not, you can absolutely reach out to support to get this particular link that I'm about to grab, or you can navigate it to your yourself by going into your account to look for this. But basically, we need to get into your security settings and your connections. We need to go down to where we see open to close. So here, third-party apps and services. Typically, if you reach out to us in support, if you say, I'm getting a 400 error, can I get that third app party and apps and services link? We'll just send that link to you. That way you can reset the connection yourself. But if you need a reset, all you got to do is ask for it. And then here you can just remove open to close really quickly. So delete connection. Yes, I want to delete. The reason we're going to want to delete it is because we just want to refresh that connection. So here we've removed it. Once I've confirmed it's been removed from here, I'm going to go back into open to close, head down into my apps and API, and then I'm going to connect. I'm going to go down and say I've whitelisted, connect Google. We'll select the account that we want to connect. And here, when we get to this page, this is the page that we're giving access. So we're refreshing. We're saying, yes, you can have access to my Google account, open to close as a verified vendor. So we'll go ahead and say allow. Now that we've done that, the quickest way to see whether or not you still got that 400 error is to go to your email inbox. And if your inbox loads, which mine is going to load, then you're good to go. The other way that you can do it is by going to a property, go to emails. This was the one that we had issues with sending. I have it sending from that Hannah Hoxie email that I just connected. Scroll to the bottom and say send. You can obviously send it to a test person. That's what I would suggest. But if you can see here, that email was sent. So if I went and checked my Google account, I would see that that email has been most likely received by me. I think it takes like a couple seconds to get it received. Nope, I got it right away. That's what that red dot means right there. So just in case you guys end up running into that issue, that's how you're going to be able to resolve it in the quickest way. I can also share the link with you guys if you want to, this third-party apps one. Like I said, it'll update this and it'll show you exactly what it is that you need to, where you need to go to. It just depends because this link can change. But third-party apps and services is the page that you want to go to in Google, remove open to close, reconnect, verify it, and then go from there. Cool. All right. Another one that it looks like came up is asking about, invalid send from email. So sometimes this can happen when a property is created, but there isn't a default email selected here. And this does happen, right? Sometimes this happens where we've deleted an email. For example, This is a deleted email, right? So if I tried to send out an email via that trigger, right? Let me check off appraisal has been ordered. Let's do send opening emails. So our opening emails are loading up. They're going to go up to my health bar. I've deleted that connection. That Denise email is no longer connected to here. And I try to send out these emails. I'm going to get that invalid send from. Or it's going to try to fire off and it did it. Oh, you know what? I think it went off of what's it called, didn't it? It's probably because I refreshed that connection. But if you get that invalid email situation, you're just going to want to update your email on this property. So default send from, we're going to want to update that to one of the connections that are valid, that are connected there. Wasn't sure if I could get it to do the broken part, but this is what we would want to update on that property if you get an invalid send from email. That way you can send out that communication. Cool. Okay, looking at the last one, connecting a Google account. So from scratch, connecting a Google account. When we go through that steps of connecting it, we're going to want to make sure that we've said that we've whitelisted it. So if you're brand new to open and close and you're going in and you're connecting it to Google, you are going to want to follow these steps here where you log into your account. You go to configure apps, you add open to close and you say that it's whitelisted. And then here you say you've whitelisted and connected, right? We want to make sure that open to close has access to it. It's typically something the admin needs to do so that you can have access to that account. Otherwise, after the fact, from that point on, you can kind of do it the other way that we had done it before. But we do need to follow the steps here, 1 through 7, before we can, connect to Google. Cool. Any questions or any follow-up questions on anything I covered so far? Sweet. Alrighty, well, if we want to jump into, let me see, did you guys answer my poll? How do I pull my polls up? Polls, there we go. It didn't come through. Let me see if I can edit it. Okay, let me see. Do you see it now? Oh, you know what? I might need to end the previous poll before I can start this new poll. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar poll. Cool. Let's go ahead and launch this one. Yep, that's totally what it was. So feel free to drop in your guys's, answers there, whether we want to talk about starting from the beginning or converting. Feel free to fill that up. And then whatever majority is, that's what we'll go off of. I just need to know what you guys want to look at first. Cool. Wait a couple more seconds for everyone to drop in their answers because we do have quite a number of people on today's call. All right, wait a couple more seconds. We just have a couple more people that are that can still have the opportunity to answer, pop in their questions, and then we'll kind of jump in. And then I think what I'll do, depending on how we do today, I'll probably try to spend 15 minutes outlining how to do it. Maybe 20 minutes. It kind of just depends. Because right now we're almost split. We've got 3 wanting us to do how to convert, and then we've got a couple people that want us to do starting from the beginning. So it kind of depends. All right, cool. Okay, 2 more minutes, or not 2 more minutes. I'm going to leave 30 more seconds to get the rest of your guys' answers in here. So go ahead and feel free to fill out that poll. And if we don't get it, we're going to move forward with how to convert to property triggers. Yeah, no worries. We'll go with majority because if it's not going to be just you. It'll definitely a couple more people want to know about how to convert as well. All right, 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Alrighty. So let's talk about converting to property triggers. So the first step, and I'll go ahead and share the results if you guys want to look at it. It's pretty straightforward. So the first step to this, right? The first step to converting to property triggers, the first thing that you guys are going to want to do is you're going to want to review your fields. We're going to want to go back to the beginning. And the reason I say this is because at this point, hopefully you've been on the system for at least a couple months. Your TCs are very familiar with the fields. They're very familiar with filling out the data on those properties, and they're feeling really confident about the different ways that they're tracking that information. You could have some TCs who say, well, when I fill out my fields, I usually update the color coordination with them so that I know when something actually truly has been received, right? Sometimes they'll have it where I've seen people where they have it as yellow first. Let's pop in that date. They make it yellow. And what that means is that it's a soft confirmation. But once it's that solid confirmation, we are doing the walkthrough, the final walkthrough on that date. Maybe they change it to green. Okay. So these types of things, knowing about your color coordination, knowing about how you're tracking your statuses or how you're taking care of that particular part of the transaction is going to be really crucial for setting you up for success. We want, if you're converting from, grow plan, pro plan to scale plan, we want to try to not add on more fields that you guys need to manage. We want to work with what you have. Your TCs are already familiar with it. We're probably going to add on a couple fields, but we don't want to add on a crazy amount because we don't want to go through and be like, okay, time to overwhelm you again while we try to use this new part of the system, right? We want to work with what they have. So a lot of the time, the first thing that we're going to be reviewing is going to be those intake questions. All right. Your intake questions are really going to decide what kinds of things do we need. Just like how you guys were working on your smart blocks and you were having it that, well, if I say yes to inspections, it brings on that inspection smart block. That's what we're going to want to start with when it comes to your property triggers as well. So the first thing that I usually like to do is I like to go through and I like to review my fields and think about what other statuses will I need, right? So heading down in here, if I go over to my appraisal details, I have a lot of fields in here. I've got, a date, value met, conditions, a cancellation, due date. So I can technically use each one of these fields to kind of propel myself forward with my appraisal situation. If I look at this and I know, okay, well, when the appraisal's scheduled, I want this particular email to go out, but I only want it to go out when it's been scheduled, right? Then okay, cool. We've got an appraisal scheduled date. Do I also, or this looks like this one's just yes or no. So we can say yes, if it's been scheduled, then we want to send out a reminder email saying, hey, this is the date that the appraisal has been scheduled. And if no, it hasn't been scheduled, then what's the next process, right? Do our TCs need to reach out to coordinate that? Or are they waiting on someone? Or do they need to reach out to get the information from someone? These are where you're kind of relying on what fields are currently in your account and how you can move forward with them. You can also alter the field itself. So changing it from appraisal scheduled to appraisal status, right? And then updating the answers here from appraisal not scheduled or not scheduled, scheduled, waived, I'm trying to think, pending, rescheduled, whatever that looks like for you guys, whatever statuses you might need so that you can say, okay, well, when we're at this point with this particular part of my process, that's when I need these sets of emails to go out. That's when I need these fields to come onto my property. That's when I need these task templates to come on my property. Just because you're converting to property triggers does not mean that you're going to be removing task templates completely. You'll probably still have a couple task templates set up in there because that's how you're going to be able to get those automatic emails for reminders to go out, right? When we're talking about property triggers, those emails will always be reviewed, right? Versus a task where I can check it off. And if it has that auto send enabled, it'll automatically send out that reminder if I need to. So that's what I like to do first. Start out with reviewing my fields, figure out which fields I have in here, figure out if I need any other statuses. You will be going back and forward to your fields quite a bit while you're making the update because you're going to be going, okay, what field do I have in here for my inspection situation? Does that match with, how I want to run my process? Once you guys have felt good about that, right? You've added in the ones that you think that you need to have in there. I suggest going with one of your processes. You can either go immediately to your task templates and you can immediately start with that buyers under contract if you'd like to. What you're going to want to do is open that up and have this in a window. I usually like to open it up twice. So here I've got my task templates here, and then I like to pull open my trigger templates. I usually will have them side by side, but what I like to do from here is if I'm focusing on my buyers under contract, I'm going to want to start from the very beginning and work my way down. Every single task that has a trigger, I'm going to want to take that trigger and convert it into a property trigger. So starting with the opening emails, here we've got these 3 opening emails, these 3 triggers on this particular task. I have to think to myself, I want to ask myself, when do I need my opening emails to go out? Do I want them to go out immediately when this particular trigger template is applied to a property? Probably, but or do I want it to go out like the same day as the intake date or the same day as the contract acceptance date, right? Whenever I set up my contingencies, that's also going to determine what time I want to have it go out. Maybe I want to review the information first and then send my intro letters after like 1 p.m. I could set it up as the same day as contract acceptance at 1 p.m. if I need to. But the main thing you're going to be doing is clicking on those triggers, reviewing each one of these particular emails and going, how am I converting this? When does this meet its, when is this going to meet its specific conditions to be able to go out? Sometimes there may not be conditions associated with it. You're going to need to send out your intro emails every single time. So the way that I have this one currently built out is I have it built out that as long as the listing agent and the buyer's agent exists on the property, then I want to send out that intro email to closing parties. I don't really need anyone else yet. I just mainly need these people on here. I could also add on a couple more conditions if I wanted to, specifically with contact roles to say, let's say I need my my title officer on there every single time before I send out my email to closing parties, or I need my lender every single time before I send out that email to closing parties. I would have those particular those rules for your contact roles here within your conditions. Okay. So that's kind of where you're starting with it. You're going to your tasks and you're saying, which task is this? So confirm earnest money receipt. I think I have that one up here. No, I don't. Okay, cool. Let's do this one. So I'll click on my confirm earnest money deposit received and uploaded. We'll click on our triggers. Here we've got 2 of them. One of them is if the task has not been completed. This email needs to go out, say the earnest money is missing. This one is if the task is completed, then I need to say that we've received earnest money, right? So what I'm going to want to do is I'll click on that email. And this is a great time for you to review your emails as well. We'll click on that little email icon. It's going to pull this open and we're going to edit the master email template. So this edits it for your entire organization. That way you're making those updates live. We'll go ahead and say yes. Once I open that up, I'm going to want to review who is it sending to, who is it CCing, who is it BCCing. I'm also going to grab the name of that template. So I'm going to copy that name right there. And I'm going to scroll down. I'm just going to review the information here. So as discussed, the earnest money receipt of X amount is required per the contract. Please submit it as soon as possible, right? So that's what the body of this particular email says for us. We're going to need some things from this, or we're going to recognize some things from this that will need to go out when we create that particular trigger. So now that I've grabbed the name of the template, let's head back over to our triggers. For trigger function, we're going to say we want to send an email and we'll say add. It's going to ask us for that template. I'm going to say apply template. I'm just going to paste the name of that template in there. That's the reason why I grabbed it, so that I could really quickly add that in there instead of having to fumble and search for it. I'll go ahead and say apply. I don't need to edit this email template. It looks great. If I needed to edit it, I've already edited it here when I was reviewing it on the tasks. In my triggers, I'm going to want to turn on that trigger. I can click on trigger options to expand this. I can also click on options to expand this. It's up to you guys on how you want it to go. If you had the triggers expanded and you added on a new one and this one was collapsed, and then you click on trigger options, it's going to collapse all of them, right? It wants to keep it uniformed. It's either collapsing all of them or showing all of them. So here for reviewing this, we're going to want to set that contingency. Well, earnest money, money is missing, right? We need that by X amount of date. So I'm going to click on contingent and I'm going to say whatever time frame I need to say. Let's say we know that we usually need to receive it by 7 a.m. One day before, and we can say business days or calendar days. I'm going to go ahead and say business days, one day before the earnest money is due, right? We needed it by 7 a.m. one day before the earnest money is due. So I can set up a due date like this. I can also set it up that it needs to happen the same day as. 7 a.m., same day as earnest money's due, I still haven't received that earnest money. It's up to you guys on how you want that formatting to look. For now, I'm just going to say this. Otherwise, I can also say immediately. The way that immediately works is that if it meets the conditions, it will want to go out immediately. Okay. So let's say it's today's the day of the contract acceptance. We've gone under contract. On your guys' file, you haven't received that earnest money receipt yet. This email, as long as it meets the conditions, will say that it's ready to go instantly, same day as contract acceptance. So before the earnest money due date has been like populated, it'll say that this email is ready to go out, saying, hey, we're still missing that earnest money deposit. So it really just depends. Do you want it that it pops up on a specific date? Then we're going to want to choose a specific time that's associated with it. If you're like, no, I need to know immediately where that document is or where that part of the process is or where those signatures are, then update this to immediately. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say immediately just for the sake of this, because it makes it a little bit easier on me. Now that we've put that in there, we're going to want to add our conditions. So condition number 1, we know on this email, based off of our review, that it's pulling in that earnest money amount. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to say that I want that condition property field, specifically the field that I want, earnest money amount, is not blank. I need a value in that earnest money amount to make sure that this email is populating correctly. Now, this is for, again, people who have been using their system. Okay. You guys are very used to putting in your earnest money amount. You're going to be used to doing that because you need to pull that information into other areas, push it over into other systems. So you're used to this. That's the whole idea of you having it there. If you're brand new, I probably wouldn't use this, right? Because you're not sure which fields you need yet for these emails, but you guys would know that if you were established in the system, you always need to enter in your earnest money amount. So here we'll go ahead and say add. That's one of our conditions. The next conditions I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to see, do we have an earnest money receive date? So earnest money, here we've got earnest money receipt date. That one could work. We could say, you know, we specifically need to ask for the earnest money if it's held by a specific person, or this could be where I'm going, you know what? I think I need an EDM status, right? This is where those status fields are going to be so crucial for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of my template editor really quickly. We'll go into my field editor. I'm going to go down to that earnest money details. Here's that earnest money details. And I'm going to add in an EDM status. Looks like my computer is like, oh, I know what you're doing. Here we go. We'll say it's a choice. Add that in there. We'll say received. Oh, actually, I'll put in receipt received. That's actually way better. Receipt received, not received. First reach out, whatever you guys need to, whatever statuses make the most sense. You could say sent to title, or sent to escrow officer, or sent to whoever is holding on to that. You can say, you know, EDM sent if you need to. So actually we'll do EDM sent, right? Because it kind of just depends. And now the reason that I built this out as well is so that I can come in here and add in my specific color coordination with this. If we haven't received it yet, I'm going to want this to be like red. Alarm bells. We haven't received this yet. I also want that status to be red, or I can make it yellow. Again, it just kind of depends on what you need. Let's go ahead and make it yellow for now, because yellow could mean that, hey, we're used in conditions, right? I've seen a lot of people use yellow as we're being used in conditions. Red is we haven't met the condition just yet, right? So, you know, maybe we need to send out a reminder email. And then green, we can make this one green, and we'll make this one here blue. Green can mean that we've received it. And we could even say received and sent, or EDM sent, whatever you guys need for your statuses. It's going to be kind of up to you guys. I'm going to go ahead and say, I understand an update. But now that we've added in that EDM status, when I head back over to my trigger templates, let's get back into that main buyer one here for the earnest money missing. I'm going to want to add that status field on there. So I'm going to say add condition. I'm going to say a property field. And then here I'm going to say that specifically we're looking for the EDM status. And if it's equal to not received, that's when I want this email to go out. And so now the way that this works is that when you go under contract, and this main buyer under contract triggers applies to that particular property. If the earnest money is not blank, you've entered in a value, which you most likely have that value in there based off of your intake form, or maybe your TCs have reviewed and entered it in. And the EDM is not equal to receive, or is equal to receive, not received, right? So we haven't received it yet. This email will be ready to queue. Hey, reaching out, we don't have this information just yet. And so what you're doing here is, instead of you having a task, right, where if you don't check it off, then an email comes up for review, or if you do check it off, then we're sending out that reminder email. Instead, we have it that based off of your fields, based off of the conditions, that's when this email is going to come up to queue. The other condition that you could add to this particular one is a file roll condition as well. Now, it kind of depends. If you guys are really comfortable with your file rolls, if you've been really comfortable with adding them to emails, removing them from emails, you're just feeling very good with your file rolls, I would say add them here. If not, you can always, and this is the brilliant thing about property triggers, you can always backfill conditions. And what this means is that if this particular template is on a property and you go, oh my gosh, I really need to add another condition to like 80 different properties, specifically that's using this specific trigger template, and it needs to say that that file belongs there, right? Then all we have to do is say, well, let me add on the condition. File roll, Earnest money receipt is missing in the property, right? That's how we would get that to populate. That has to be missing to be able to send out this missing email. We can click on backfill conditions. As long as this particular template was on those properties, it would say, cool, what do you want to backfill? You say, I want to backfill the conditions. It's going to add those conditions to that, to those properties. And then that way, it's saving you guys the effort, and it's making it easier for you guys to continue to go through and figure out, okay, what conditions make the most sense for me? Maybe I want to remove conditions. Maybe I need to add on some more. You can also alter who it's assigned to. You can alter the options. You can insert the trigger. If you added a trigger to here, right, to your property triggers, and you need to add it onto a property, click on insert a trigger, and then you're adding that trigger to a property so that that part of your process is covered. And that's kind of the brilliant thing about property triggers, is that we have this ability to either backfill, in other words, apply it to properties that, have already been existing. If we're continuing to work on this, hey, I figured out that I do need an email saying when the earnest money is missing. I would love it if it came up when this and this and this condition has not been met or have been met. That's when I need this particular email to go out. You can use that insert trigger to insert it into live transactions. So that's kind of the two of the parts of that's kind of brilliant with it. Do we have any questions? Hopefully we're not feeling too overwhelmed. It is a lot, but the great thing about this is that we are recording. So if you guys want to go back and you want to review this again, you'll have the opportunity to see it from beginning to end, how I make that conversion. Yeah, the backfill is such a cool feature as you guys start to use your system live. Because remember, like, once we get this built out, right now, I could totally apply it if I wanted to. It's got a couple triggers on it. I want to see how it works. I want to see if I like it or not. I can head over to my intake form, head over to my buyer side, head over into my form triggers, and I can go and find that main under contract. Let me find it. Take me down to it. See if it highlights for me. Here we go. Main under contract. This one's for our document templates look like. For the tasks, this one's if it's equal to buyer dual. Here's for tasks. Let me click on that template and let me say, well, I want that. I want to test it out. I want to see what that looks like. I'm going to scroll down until I get to my triggers. Here's my trigger templates. Here's my main under contract triggers. And I want to say add. What I usually suggest when you guys are trying to adopt things, you're trying to get used to things, add it to your intake form. You can also add it to your properties if you'd like to too. So I can go to, let's go ahead and go to Main Street. Let's go ahead and go to Ivy Lane. We'll go to our triggers. Let me see if I have any trigger templates on here right now. I do. Let me delete those. And then let me apply that template. Even if there's only a couple on there, it's good to get your guys's get yourselves, familiar with it, testing it out, playing with it right away. Start with the basics, start with those intro emails, start with those reminder emails. Once you have that in here, you can kind of run with it from here. So here we can see, again, we've got this one ready to go. It meets these particular permissions. If I feel good about it, I want to send it out. Here I've got my Earnest Money amount in here. I'm going to head down to my Earnest Money and I'm going to change a couple things on it. So I just need to add on that EDM status and say update fields. I'm going to go back down to my Earnest Money due date. I don't have anything in receipt. Let's go ahead and say that this has not been received. We'll go ahead and click on our triggers again. I believe that was all. Let me go to schedule. Nope, it's going to be in process. Let me see what the other conditions are on here. Earnest Money missing in property. Okay, hold on. Let me remove that particular Earnest Money. There we go. So we can see how that looks when it's ready to come up. I had that Earnest Money role assigned to that particular area, and I had that file there, but I went ahead and removed the role to show you guys what it looks like. So now this particular trigger is ready to go because not only do we have it that Earnest Money receipt is missing in the property, the EDM status is equal to not received, and the Earnest Money is not blank. This is how I can have that set up. The other thing I could do, like, again, if I'm like, well, I do want that placeholder there. I don't have it uploaded just yet, but I do need that Earnest Money placeholder there, right? Added that on there. Well, technically it doesn't meet the conditions anymore, right? Because I say that the file's there, but it's not. Let's go ahead and head back to our templates, into our triggers, head down to our trigger template that we were just working on. I'm going to delete that file role condition. Yep, I want to delete it. And then I'm going to backfill those conditions. Do you want to process process triggers after backfill? No, but I do want to make sure I'm performing this action. Let's go ahead and backfill this trigger. And again, you saw it's only backfilling the one, but if it needed to, it could backfill other ones. But what that's doing is that's updating the conditions for that particular trigger. So if I go back to that property now and I go to triggers, voila, that trigger is ready to go. It's due immediately. We have not received it yet, and the Earnest Money is not blank. So that's kind of the power behind this, right? Now, if I create another trigger, let's go ahead and create another one together because we have a couple more minutes. We'll go back down to our triggers. Let's go ahead and create that opposite side. We've got our Earnest Money received, update to closing parties. Perfect. Let's go ahead and click on that email. Let's go ahead and edit that email. Again, this is a great opportunity for you guys to review that email. Maybe you need to update who you're sending it to. You need to add in some merge fields, whatever you need to do. Maybe you need to apply it, right? Attach that file role so that you make sure that that's gotten attached there, right? So we've done all of that. We feel good about it. We're going to head back over into our triggers. This is our trigger template. We're going to say we want to send an email. We say add trigger. We're going to say that we want to send this particular, we've received the Earnest Money. Hey, just want to let everyone know we're right on track. That's been attached. I can click on my trigger options to expand these triggers. I'm going to go ahead and turn on this trigger, and I'm going to update the contingency. So I would, once again, want to say that this one needs to go out immediately, because what I want it to do is that the moment that we've received that particular EDM, I want this email to go out. Hey guys, everything's good. We've received it. We're right on track, right? So now that I've added that on there, I want to update two parts of this. I want to go to condition, and I want to say if that property field, EDM status, is equal to receipt received. Add that on there. And then if I want to, I can grab another field. We'll say property field, Earnest Money, receipt date, right? So that we can say that specific date is not blank as well. So now we have this trigger built out that as long as it's set to we have received it and that Earnest Money date is not blank, then we want this email to go out, okay? I can click on insert trigger. Do I want to insert this trigger? Do I want to process it? I don't need to process it right now, but I do want to insert this trigger. Let's go ahead and backfill that property. Once we've done that, we can go back to that property. And now we're going to update some things. We're going to go down to EDM received, right? Because right now we're seeing that we're missing it. Oh, I just received the document. I'm going to update that to not received to receipt received. And then I received it today. So I'm going to Earnest Money receipt date. And I'm going to say, let me click on today, the 15th update. Now that I've updated it, I'm just going to click on triggers again to refresh. But now we have that other trigger coming out. Here's that other trigger. So that's kind of like the brilliant part about working with your property triggers, is that I want you to start out with the basics, right? Just like I always suggest, build out your system as if it's the perfect transaction. As things start to go wrong, as things start to change, that's when you're going to want to add on those other kind of checks and balances. That's when you're going to add on those reminders to make sure that nothing gets missed in your guys' process. Or that's when you're going to add on those emails to say, hey, we've received things. Because sometimes it's not just about we're missing things, but sometimes it's that we haven't sent it to the correct people, or people are wondering about an update. And you're like, you know what, this update seemed to really like, my clients seem to really enjoy getting an update about this. Let me add this to my process. And the brilliant part about using property triggers is that as you guys go through and you figure out, oh, you know what, it would be great if I could do this, you can do it, right? Build that out in your property triggers and then insert them into the properties that you're currently using. And you can have your TC send out that data the same day as the update that you made it, right? Within the same couple minutes, because it was literally 2 minutes since we made that update. Do we have any questions on that portion of things with property triggers, or how to make that conversion? Cool. Okay, awesome. All righty, guys. Well, we're at our last 3 minutes. I'm glad that we were able to kind of do a deep dive on this and kind of go through what property triggers look like, how to make that conversion, some of the great tips and tricks when it comes to like inserting those conditions or inserting those triggers again, or even just removing conditions if we need to. And if we needed to, again, I could go back to that trigger template and delete off some of those triggers if I needed to. I could also turn them off if I needed to and have that update, right? If I go back down to our trigger templates and I turn off some of those triggers and I insert them, it's going to update for all of those properties. If you say, oh, these ones are broken, let me just turn those off really quickly. What you can do from here is you can say, hey, well, I want these turned off, right? You can also turn them off on the property if you need to as well. Awesome. Cool. Okay, guys. Well, let's go over our usual thing that we do at the end of each call, where we talk about resources. If you guys need help, yeah, of course. Thanks for joining us today, Todd. If you guys need help or you need to talk with someone, definitely reach out to us at help@open2close if you'd like to send an email. If not, you can always chat with us by using the chat icon down here at the bottom. You can also chat with us if you're on our main webpage. We just usually suggest like log in and then chat with us. That way, if we need to take a look at your account, we can see which email you're using to log into your account. And then we can, it's easier for us to triage and figure out what's going on. Loom videos are always appreciated if you guys are running into anything. If you're playing with your smart blocks and something's going wonky, Loom videos, screenshots, properties, titles of things, all of that stuff is really crucial and very helpful for us to be able to help you guys out efficiently and quickly. If you guys are looking for more webinars like today's webinar, head to our main page, click on that Learn tab and head to webinars. Today, we just wrapped that Wednesday workshop. Next week, we're going to be going over tasks and triggers. And then that following Wednesday, we're going to be going over contacts 101. We'll probably be touching on team members and teams as well. So if you guys are interested, definitely feel free to join that one. Other than that, thank you guys for joining today. If there's any other questions that we didn't get to or things that you're like, you know what, I thought about this after the fact, like I said, feel free to reach out to us, send those over. And yeah, we'll look forward to talking with you guys soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And I will hopefully see you next Wednesday.